They say the devil is in the details. As an architect, I've always believed the opposite. Truth resides in the details. The precise angle of a beam, the hidden drainage in a foundation, the single, consistent flaw in a perfect picture. My name is Elias Thorne, and the truth that shattered my life was hidden in a collection of happy photos, a ghost blurred in the background of every shot. Her ex, Mark. But this story isn't just about discovering a lie. It's about the architecture of a life, and what happens when you have to tear down a corrupted structure to save its most precious inhabitant, my daughter, Lily. My world was a carefully drafted blueprint brought to life. I designed it around Chloe and Lily. Chloe was the soaring atrium, the stunning glass facade that caught the light. I was the foundation, the load-bearing walls, the unseen plumbing and electrical that made the house a home. And Lily? Lily was the heart of the home, the reason for every door, every window, every safe space. But foundations can settle, and facades can crack. The change in Chloe was subtle at first, a restlessness she blamed on turning 35. She started talking about her legacy, a word I'd never heard her use before. It was around this time that Mark re-entered our orbit, not in person, but as a constant glittering specter in her conversations. "He's not just rich, Elias, he's a visionary," she'd say, scrolling through his social media feed filled with private jets and panels at Davos. "He builds empires. It's so impactful." I'd look up for my blueprints for a community center, a project that would provide a safe space for hundreds of children. "Building a good home is an empire too, Chloe." She'd just smile a pitying smile. "Oh, Elias, you're so sweet." The dinner party was the moment the crack became a fissure. Mark arrived, a hurricane of designer cologne and boisterous self-regard. He held court at my table, in the home I built, and held forth on the tyranny of the mediocre. "The middle class," he announced, swirling the wine I had chosen with care, "is a mindset, a fear of scale, a contentment with enough." His eyes then fell on Lily, who was quietly, meticulously building a fantastical castle from her Legos, complete with a unique, interlocking pattern she'd designed herself. "And what do we have here?" he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "The little architect. She gets it from her mother, I see. The vision, the spark." He then turned his gaze to me, and the air went out of the room. A shame to see it domesticated, walled in by such modest ambitions. They say the devil is in the details. As an architect, I've always believed the opposite. Truth resides in the details. The precise angle of a beam, the hidden drainage in a foundation, the single, consistent flaw in a perfect picture. My name is Elias Thorne, and the truth that shattered my life was hidden in a collection of happy photos, a ghost blurred in the background of every shot. Her ex, Mark. But this story isn't just about discovering a lie. It's about the architecture of a life, and what happens when you have to tear down a corrupted structure to save its most precious inhabitant, my daughter, Lily. My world was a carefully drafted blueprint brought to life. I designed it around Chloe and Lily. Chloe was the soaring atrium, the stunning glass facade that caught the light. I was the foundation, the load-bearing walls, the unseen plumbing and electrical that made the house a home. And Lily? Lily was the heart of the home, the reason for every door, every window, every safe space. But foundations can settle, and facades can crack. The change in Chloe was subtle at first, a restlessness she blamed on turning 35. She started talking about her legacy, a word I'd never heard her use before. It was around this time that Mark re-entered our orbit, not in person, but as a constant glittering specter in her conversations. "He's not just rich, Elias, he's a visionary," she'd say, scrolling through his social media feed filled with private jets and panels at Davos. "He builds empires. It's so impactful." I'd look up for my blueprints for a community center, a project that would provide a safe space for hundreds of children. "Building a good home is an empire too, Chloe." She'd just smile a pitying smile. "Oh, Elias, you're so sweet." The dinner party was the moment the crack became a fissure. Mark arrived, a hurricane of designer cologne and boisterous self-regard. He held court at my table, in the home I built, and held forth on the tyranny of the mediocre. The middle class, he announced, swirling the wine I had chosen with care, is a mindset, a fear of scale, a contentment with enough. His eyes then fell on Lily, who was quietly, meticulously building a fantastical castle from her Legos, complete with a unique, interlocking pattern she'd designed herself. "And what do we have here?" he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "The little architect. She gets it from her mother, I see. The vision, the spark." He then turned his gaze to me, and the air went out of the room. A shame to see it domesticated, walled in by such modest ambitions.
The blow was so precise, so cruel. He wasn't just insulting me, he was devaluing our entire world in front of our daughter, and implying that her spark was being stifled by the very walls I had built to protect her. I saw Chloe flush, a mixture of shame and something else, a strange thrill. She said nothing in our defense. The cold hum in my mind, a quiet dissonance I'd ignored for months, became a shard of ice in my chest. The girls' weekend was proposed the next week. The script was perfect. The need for a reset. The photos that followed were a masterpiece of misdirection. Chloe and her two friends laughing, always in a tight trio. But my architect's eye, trained to see spatial relationships, saw the flaw. The blurred figure in the background wasn't a random tourist. His posture, his silhouette, it was Mark. He was a constant, a haunting presence in the narrative of her innocence. This is where the longer story truly begins, the 20 minutes of silent, meticulous work that separates a gut feeling from a confirmed truth. I didn't rage. I observed. I logged. I became a forensic analyst of my own life. I checked our shared credit card statement. The flights and hotel were booked through her personal account, a small but significant deviation. I noted the brand of wine in her photos, an obscenely expensive vintage I knew Mark favored. But I needed certainty. I needed unassailable proof, not for a court of law yet, but for the court of my own conscience. I needed to be able to look at Lily one day and say, I knew, and I acted. I reached out to an old university friend, Ben, who now ran a high-end security consultancy. We met in a quiet corner of a library, not a bar. The setting mattered. Ben, I said, sliding a folder with the photos across the table, I need you to find the truth. Ben, a man of few words, studied the pictures. His finger tapped the blurred figure of Mark. The ghost. He looked at me, his eyes full of pity. Elias, are you sure? Once I dig, you can't unknow what we find. The foundation is already cracked, Ben, I said, my voice steady. I need to know if the whole structure is condemned. His investigation was swift and clinical. The dossier he delivered 3 days later was a work of devastating art. Flight manifests? Mark was on the same flight, seated across the aisle from one of Chloe's friends. Hotel invoices? Not just the same hotel, but a single, sprawling, private villa booked under Mark's company. The friends were in a smaller, adjoining room. They were paid escorts, hired to provide the alibi. The final piece was a photograph, taken with a long lens. It was Chloe and Mark, not in a passionate embrace, but in a heated argument by the villa's pool. Her body language was furious. His was dismissive. This wasn't just a fling. It was a toxic, complex relationship. She was chasing his world, and he was treating her as a temporary diversion. The betrayal was deeper than infidelity. It was a fundamental rejection of our shared values for a gilded nightmare. The ice in my chest melted, replaced by a clear, cold resolve. The time for observation was over. It was time for demolition and redesign. My hidden advantage was, as I said, my company, Thorne Composite Technologies. But in this expanded story, you need to understand why it was such a powerful weapon. It wasn't just a patent, it was the bedrock of my identity. While Mark played with numbers on a screen, I had created something tangible, something that made buildings safer, more efficient, more beautiful. My quiet success was a testament to my philosophy. True power is in creation, not acquisition. My initial plan was simple: divorce, protect Lily, ruin Mark. But as I delved deeper, a more elegant, more devastating strategy emerged. I realized I wasn't just dealing with a liar and a bully. I was dealing with a system, Mark's world of financial arrogance, and to protect Lily forever, I had to make that system reject him. I met with my lawyer, Sarah Chen, a razor-sharp woman who believed in justice, not just law. We didn't just freeze assets, we built a legal fortress. My company was placed in a blind trust for Lily, untouchable. We filed a preemptive lis pendens on our house, clouding the title so it couldn't be sold or leveraged. We were building a bunker, and we were doing it before the first bomb fell. This is new. I couldn't just spring a trap. I had to make Mark walk into it willingly, arrogantly. I began a subtle campaign. I let Chloe see me struggling. I pretended to be overwhelmed by a complex project, spending late nights at the office. I wanted her, and by extension Mark, to believe I was distracted, weak, and burying myself in my modest work. I was the mouse, and I needed the cat to get complacent. Ben's investigation into Mark's firm, Apex Ventures, revealed the golden nugget. Their investment in Connect, but I went deeper. I used my industry contacts to get the full, confidential investor prospectus for Connect. Buried in the appendix was a key man clause and a morality clause. Mark wasn't just an investor, he was the key man whose reputation was deemed critical to the investment. His adultery, if linked to a public scandal that damaged the brand, gave the board the right to force him out and claw back his shares. I didn't just have leverage, I had the combination to his entire professional safe. I drafted the press release, but I also drafted a separate confidential letter to the Connect board, detailing the evidence with legal precision. The public release was the threat. The private letter was the guaranteed silent kill.
The stage was set. The materials were gathered. The blueprint for their downfall was complete. All I needed was the right moment to begin construction. Chloe returned, trailing the scent of deception and expensive perfume. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. The stories were elaborate, filled with name-dropped sommeliers and spa treatments. I played my part perfectly, the tired, devoted husband, listening with a sympathetic smile. The perfect moment presented itself. Lily's birthday party. The symbolism was irresistible, a celebration of the very life they held in contempt. When Mark swaggered in, his presence was a violation. He was polluting her safe space. I saw Lily's smile falter when he patted her head and called her kiddo, his eyes already scanning for Chloe. He found me by the punch bowl, a scene of domestic bliss he clearly found amusing. "Elias, quite the production. You really know how to throw a wholesome party." "Wholesome is the point, Mark," I said, my voice flat. "It's what you build a life on. Can I have a word with you and Chloe? In my office. It's about the Napa photography. The composition was flawed." The walk to my office was the longest of their lives. I could feel their nervous energy. Chloe's was laced with fear, Mark's with impatience. Lily, curious, trailed behind, a silent witness I had counted on. I closed the door. The party sounds were muffled. We were in a soundproofed chamber. "Your photography, Chloe," I began.
my tone that of a professor reviewing a failed project. I brought up the first ghostly image. The rule of thirds is all wrong. You see this recurring blur? It ruins the entire composition. She blustered. This is insane. That could be anyone. Let's enhance the resolution then. Click. The screen split, showing the investigators' crystal clear photos. The kiss, the shared villa, the image of them arguing by the pool was the most damning. It revealed the sordid reality of their romance. Chloe crumbled into a chair, sobbing. Not tears of remorse, but of being caught. Mark's reaction was different. He didn't deny it. He laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. So what? You have pictures? You're a cuckold with a photo album. What are you going to do, cry to your lawyer? I'll buy the best one in the city before you can dial the number. This was the moment. The trap was sprung.
I already have the best one, Mark, I said, not raising my voice. And she's already done her work. I turned the screen to him. This is your firm's investment, Connect. This is their key man clause. And this, I pulled a bound document from my drawer, is the report that will be sent to their board, demonstrating how your personal conduct, your deliberate sabotage of a family, your harassment of a minor child by devaluing her father and her home, constitutes a material breach of their morality clause. His face went ashen. He was no longer looking at a betrayed husband. He was looking at a business risk he had failed to calculate. The press release to the WSJ is the fireworks, I continued calmly. But this board report is the quiet administrative bullet that will end your career at Apex. Your partners will vote you out within 48 hours to save their own skin. You'll be a pariah. No one trusts a key man who is also a liability. I presented the choice, as cold and hard as steel. Option A, professional and social annihilation. Option B, you walk away. You resign from Connect's board today. You wire $5 million, not to me, to a trust for Lily, to atone for your comment about her modest future, and you vanish. The clock is ticking. The disintegration of a narcissist is a horrifying and satisfying spectacle. The bluster, the rage, the begging. He cycled through them all in 60 seconds. Finally, broken, he scrawled his signature on the documents I provided. As he slunk out, a broken man, I turned to Chloe. Her sobs had stopped. She was just empty. The divorce petition is filed. The house is mine. Your things will be packed and sent to you. You need to leave this party and never come back. She looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw the woman I fell in love with, buried under layers of regret and avarice. Then it was gone. She walked out, leaving only the echo of her betrayal. I looked to the doorway. Lily stood there, her small face serious. She walked in, past the empty chair where her mother had been, and straight into my arms. "You sent the bad man away," she whispered into my shirt. "I redesigned the world, Lily," I corrected softly, holding her tight. "A world with better security."
The consequences were more profound than I could have imagined. Mark resigned from Connect, the money for Lily's trust arrived, but the ripple effect was brutal. The sudden, unexplained resignation spooked the market. Apex Ventures forced him out 6 months later with a minimal severance package. The visionary was now unemployable, his reputation a cautionary tale in Silicon Valley circles. He became a ghost, just like he was in those photos, but now he was blurred from the world he loved. Chloe got a settlement, but not the life of luxury she craved. She bounced from a short-lived, miserable reconciliation with Mark to a series of shallow relationships. She was a tenant in other people's lives, never a homeowner again. We communicate only through a parenting app, her messages sterile and functional.
But my world has a new skyline. The story ends not in my office, but on the roof of a new community center, the project I was working on when my life fell apart. It's finished. It's beautiful. Lily and I are there, looking out over the city. The sun is setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Positive revenge isn't about violence, it's about valuation. You look at the thing the antagonist values most, their reputation, their wealth, their ego, and you prove conclusively that its value was an illusion, sustained only by the tolerance of others. I didn't destroy Mark. I revealed that he was already bankrupt. I didn't cast Chloe out. I showed her the door to the gilded cage she was so desperate to enter, and she found it led only to an empty room. Lily points to our house, visible in the distance. Our home looks small from up here, Daddy. I put my arm around her. It's the right size for what's inside, Lily girl, and it's built on the strongest foundation I know. She looks up at me, her faith absolute. Love and integrity and the quiet, unshakable power of a well-drafted plan. They thought I was just building models. They never realized I was the architect of consequences all along.